Hello everyone, Samutari here, and welcome back to another MMO sampler video. Today is actually pretty special because we're actually revisiting an MMO which I covered in one of my earliest videos on this channel, dating all the way back to August of 2013, and that is Digimon Masters. Now as a kid, I grew up in the 90s, and I loved both Pokemon and Digimon. I had the V-Pet, the Digivices, the trading cards, the action figures, and I watched the animated series as well. So in 2013, when I ran across a forum discussing the two series that eventually linked to this Digimon MMO, well, I knew that I had to try it out. To give you a brief history on the game, Digimon Masters is a free MMORPG created by Move Games in 2009. It originally released in Korea, and then it launched worldwide in 2011. The game is based off of the Digimon anime, specifically the 5th series known as Digimon Data Squad. While the reception of the game itself is not listed on the Wikipedia page, several reviews gave this game a low rating. Even after the game was re-released in 2022, using the Unity engine and made available via Steam and stuff, the reviews were mixed at best, with most pointing more towards the negative side. Back when I played the game in 2013, I wasn't exactly impressed, and so I was hoping that the new release in Unity and multiple patches would have improved its formula. In my old review, I mostly talked about the history of Digimon, but we're not going to bother with that here. But I do want to talk about my impressions of the MMO from my old review. And those impressions were that 1, the game was free, which was awesome, but that would clearly come with some downsides. 2, money was going to be hard to come by, and I'm talking in-game currency. Number 3, microtransactions would be the main driving force of the game, meaning that the game would be very pay to win. Number 4, the storyline was not very straightforward, and therefore it was very hard to understand. Number 5, it doesn't really add anything new to the MMO formula to make it stand apart from other free games, or even from the games that you would normally have to pay for. Number 6, it had decent graphics for a free game, but they were decent on the side of being very crappy, and therefore the game was not very alluring. It didn't have very nice aesthetics. Number 7, the servers were way too crowded back in 2013, and that created a lot of lag, especially when it came to players that were parking in front of NPCs. Number 8, there was a huge lack of servers for how many people played this game and how laggy the servers were currently. Number 9, there was a lack of WASD movement, and I went on a tirade about this. I basically said that at the time I was playing on a laptop, and therefore I didn't have like a mouse pad and a mouse because I didn't have a desk. So any game that I played had to have access to WASD movement, otherwise I couldn't really enjoy that game. And I guess that there was a lack of that because the buttons were already hotkeyed to something else, which, playing it again, we'll see if that changed. But that was one major issue I had with the game back in 2013. And number 10, lack of character creation, which I'm huge with when it comes to MMORPGs. And number 11, parking in front of NPCs, which I mentioned before. That was just a huge problem. Now, did any of these change when I replayed the game in 2022? Well, let's just go ahead and break it down and talk about it. First, let's get into the story. So, the story, as I explained it in my old review, it did not really seem to change from the 2 hours I played through this MMO this time around. So you're a tamer who's trying to pass your exam in order to become a DATS agent. DATS agents keep the peace by handling problems that arise from Digimon entering the real world from the digital world. I guess there's a backstory here with a computer called King Drasil, which hosts the digital world, and the more power that the digital world gains, then the more likely it is that Digimon can appear in our world, since I guess the digital world is considered a parallel world to our world. But the thing is for all this story that you can find on the Wikipedia, none of that's really present in the game. You just know that you're a DATS agent and that you have to stop, or that you have to help the problem with the Digimon entering the real world, and you're trying to pass this exam so that you can actually do that. And this time around, there was actually a cutscene, which I was very shocked. I do not remember there being a cutscene in 2013, and you know, you get to use a Digimon to take down King Drasil, and then there's this program that seems to run, and I don't know what any of that means. So, I mean, if you've never watched Digimon Data Squad, which I have not, I'm more of like an OG Digimon person, then maybe this is something that you really won't understand, because I know that I didn't understand it, and I don't understand it. Or maybe it's one of those stories that's a very slow burn, like Torum Online, where it just kind of slowly feeds you lore, and it's not really enough to keep you engaged, but there is lore there. You just have to be patient and keep going through the story. But while a DATS agent's job is not really explained too much, the way in which you end up conducting your test is by running around Yokohama City and completing quests for various trainers as they teach you the basics of the game. So after you finish with the DATS exam and you then pass, you're then tasked to speak with a DATS captain to begin your missions for Sirius. Now, like I said before, the story could have been interesting if it weren't for the fact that the English translation in this game is absolutely horrid. I could hardly understand what anyone was saying and had to take my best guess at what they were trying to actually convey in their sentences. This actually made me want to skip most of the text boxes rather than read them because they seriously gave me a headache. The translations at first really weren't all that bad, it was just minor mistakes here and there. But then you get into places where it's just like, it's more than just like mistranslation. It just comes down to general grammar, where like things aren't punctuated, things aren't capitalized, and it's just really broken and very gross to try and read it. So, you know, you're trying to take this thing seriously, and you're trying to get immersed, and it's really just not possible because of that, because you're trying your hardest, your brain's just trying to put these sentences together in a way that makes sense, and they just really don't. So I commend anybody that literally took the time to sit there and try and figure out what these people were trying to say. But yeah, no, there was no way. And like I said, I could have gotten so much more into the story if I could actually enjoy the story. There was actually a quest called the Mysterious, or the Suspicious Singer, which was spelled the Suspicious Singer. And this suspicious singer, he starts giving you this dialogue as to why he's there. And first he thinks, I guess he first thinks that you're a fan, and then he realizes that you're not, or maybe he thinks that you still are, and that's why he doesn't want to talk to you. And then your trainer goes, oh, he has Digimon with him. You must kill these Digimon now, or defeat them, you know, because you don't really kill them. But you have to defeat these Digimon. So then you do that, and then he goes on this spiel, this suspicious singer. He goes on this spiel, and then the text box just kind of quits halfway through. Usually you have to press something to accept that you've read the dialogue or something, but this time the text box literally quits before the man's finished even speaking, and nothing else loads in, and you literally have to press X out of the text box, and then the quest just continues as normal. So, I mean, this is like the level of quality that I'm talking about. So it's really hard to kind of get into the world and get into the narrative when it's so lazy, really. Like, whoever translated it or did the translation job, like, I'm sure that they did their best, but it just was not a good job. And for this game to have been re-released in 2022 on the Unity engine, someone really needs to go in and fix all these things, because it could be a good MMO, but it has to start with the small stuff, and, you know, unfortunately this really does ruin immersion, and it really does make it hard to kind of get into it. So let's just go ahead and talk about the game mechanics. So, also the game mechanics in this game had not really changed from when I last spoke about it in 2013, except that they did seem to add a lot of quality of life changes, just unfortunately not the freaking translation. The HUD was now a lot more customizable, and they even allowed for the use of WSD movement this time, which, that was, like I said, it was a huge thing I complained about back in the day. So, as a tamer, you really don't do anything physical when fighting, because, I mean, your whole job is you're going around defeating other Digimon. So, but you yourself don't do anything. Rather, you have a partner Digimon that you choose upon making your character. There are 4 different tamers to choose from, and likewise there are 4 partner Digimon, all with different abilities. Now, while the tamer doesn't do anything other than do all the walking, I guess, they do have their own special abilities, I guess. They have their own passive abilities. I suppose that later that becomes handy, especially for things like PvP or like major bosses that appear on maps. I did notice by looking through the different tamers that there seemed to be two that kind of took on a DPS role. The female was the healer, and there was one male that had like a tank ability. It seems like one DPS was more ranged based, while another one was very close melee based. So I think depending on what tamer you choose depends on what roles you would take on in like dungeons or maybe during those massive boss battles on the map. But that's just me guessing because, again, I'm really not sure. The passives of the tamers not really explained, but I assume, again, that it's just a passive ability that's passed down to your Digimon, since you yourself don't have any skills that you use as a tamer. But the goal is to go around and do various fetch quests like you would in any other MMO. The only difference here is that your partner Digimon does all the fighting, and you can actually have multiple Digimon on your team. I'm not really sure how many you can have on your team, but I know that starting out I had two, because they give you an extra one just to teach you about the hatching mechanic. So I had two Digimon, but I'm not sure how many you can actually have total. I do know that you can store Digimon in a warehouse, so you can actually just pick and choose what Digimon you want to have with you. But I believe you always have to have your partner Pokemon. I mean, your partner Digimon. It's not a Pokemon. Your partner Digimon. I assume you always have to have that with you. Since there seems to be a differentiation between partner Digimon and mercenary Digimon, which I thought was a very weird choice of words, but, you know, it's whatever. But the way that you get these multiple Digimon is by hatching eggs. Eggs can be collected via events or by defeating enemy Digimon, and there is a special way in which they must be hatched. You must use a combination of chips and the in-game currency to hatch these eggs, which will give you a Digimon of varying rarity. So essentially, they teach you how to do this very early on, but again, because of poor translation, they don't really teach you very well. You first have to have a Digimon egg, and then you have to go and scan that egg to identify what sort of egg it is. Then once you have the identification, you can then place that egg into an incubator, and then you have to have special data chips which correspond to the type of egg that you have. And then you have to basically press a button to input this data, and after 3 successful data inputs, you can then hatch the egg, and then the egg will pop out the Digimon. Now, because there is that mystery on what you might get, and or how good of a Digimon it is, one could say that this MMO is a lot like a gacha game. And again, going back to the Steam reviews, I saw a lot of people mentioning that this was basically a gacha game, which I've played enough gacha games that I know that I hate gacha in MMO, and it seems like that is now the current like trend with free MMOs. Pay to win was always bad enough in free MMOs, but now with the gacha element, it just makes it unbearable, and I hate it. Doing quest earns you and your Digimon experience. I don't know why both of you level up, but whatever. Since your tamer doesn't do anything. Leveling up your Digimon then allows you to Digivolve, which then unlocks more powers for that Digimon. And I found it kind of odd. So your Digimon, as it levels up, will get more powers, but sometimes its Digivolved form may have less skills. They're just more powerful skills. So I think what the game wants you to do is it kind of wants you to cycle throughout the various forms of your Digimon to find what works for you for a specific situation. I'm not really sure because the combat didn't really matter too much right away. But yeah. Digimon also seem to have elemental types, which I guess would come into play as well. But like I said in my old review, the tutorial in the story is all very bare minimum, and it can be hard to pick up as well. And it's just really hard to focus on because of all the different elements that they throw at you at once. One thing I did kind of notice is that because it has been re-released this year, there is an event going on where you do get a lot of, like, newer items. I've noticed that there's a lot of old MMOs coming back. They're basically running off of nostalgia. They're banking on the fact that there are people out there that are nostalgic for this game and want to play this game some more. And so what they end up doing is they end up hosting these events where they give you a bunch of like experience bonus, special avatar items, just a whole bunch of in-game items that normally you would not get. I remember back when I first played this game, I only got like a few levels in because the leveling was so slow, and I didn't really understand the way in which experience was gained. Experience is gained mostly by doing quests, and you can earn experience by defeating Digimon, and there's wild Digimon all over the world. The problem is that you have to look for the Digimon that have red in their name. If they do not have a red name or a pink name, you're not really earning any experience from these Digimon. If their names are white or gray, you're not earning anything. So I just went around like murdering all these Digimon, and I wasn't getting anything for it, and I really didn't understand. Now that I know about this mechanic, that's fine, but if you don't really have any quests going on, or if you don't know where to go for your quests, then there doesn't really seem any point in defeating Digimon unless you're just trying to get currency or you're trying to get eggs, which, again, eggs take so much currency that you don't really have right away, that really doing that would just be a waste of inventory space. So once more, we're kind of running into an issue with the gameplay mechanics where there seems to be a problem with balance. The game wants you to go through and do all these quests, and it wants you to, do all this stuff, but it's not really enticing you to explore. It's not really giving you a reason to want to defeat all these different Digimon, and so you just find yourself running through these sections and kind of just avoiding some things that could have some neat elements to them if the love and care was actually put into this game to begin with. So let's go ahead and talk about the microtransactions. So anytime you run across a free MMO, there is always going to be that chance that you're walking into a game that's very pay to win. And Digimon Masters is no exception to this rule. In fact, of all the Steam reviews, especially the negative ones, most people cite the pay to win system as being way too much, and that you really have to invest money into the game if you want to enjoy it. Because otherwise, it's just too much grinding for very few rewards. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to microtransactions, as I know they are now a staple in almost every game we have today. I paid for Fallout First, I paid for ESO Plus, like, I've put money into Torum, so it's like, I get the idea behind microtransactions. I pay for stuff in Final Fantasy XIV and Guild Wars 2 as well, so like, I get it. But there does have to be a balance, and clearly Digimon Masters has not found that balance, and that's something I keep saying about this game. Lack of balance, lack of balance, lack of balance. So looking at the prices for items, they weren't really bad. They were actually very cheap. They even had stuff as cheap as 10 cents. But I would not recommend spending a penny on this game, mostly just due to the fact that it's not really a game of quality. And it's pretty bad and pretty broken for something that came out in 2022. Now, some other points to go over that kind of have to do with things that I mentioned in my old review. Whereas there was a lack of servers before, there are now 5 or 6 servers with a status showing you how full they were. I only saw one server that was moderately... Actually, no. I only saw one server that was heavily, populated, and it was in the red. But the rest of them were green, and they were really smooth. The servers ran really, really well, but you still have people that are parked in front of NPCs, which is not cool. But luckily nowadays, like I said, with the improvements to the quality of life in this game, you can now speak to NPCs using the spacebar, so there's no need to really click on them anymore, which made this problem not such a huge deal. The current events going on created a lot more inventory space because they give you warehouse space increases and inventory space increases, blah blah blah. So inventory and warehouse space wasn't really a problem starting out. Plus, there are items that now stack, unlike how they used to, because it used to be that certain things didn't stack. So, whereas the inventory space was one problem that I mentioned in my review back in 2013, right now that doesn't really seem to be a problem. Character creator is still not really existent in this game, which is really, really sad, because I think it would be amazing if you had the ability to create your own tamer. There are avatar clothes that you can change out to kind of create a custom looking character, and this does help. but only very slightly. And again, since you're basing your personal since you're basing the tamer that you pick based on your personal playstyle, even if you can pick a tamer, you might not end up choosing one that you personally like as far as looks, just because you don't want to have to play as a healer. And I am talking about the fact that there's still only 1 female to 3 male characters, which, again, balance. There is PvE and PvP in the game, and looking at the live chat, there were some active players going after quests and event bosses, so there are still people playing this game. They did seem to be English speaking, so I mean, for me that was good because I could understand what they were saying, but I didn't know where they were. I didn't know where they were or what they were doing or how to get there. And it does seem like PvP is like one of the more major functions of this game. I could see that being the case, especially since it's Digimon and people probably want to pit their monsters against each other. So the PvP area seemed to be highly populated. PvE was not so populated. I didn't run into a single other player until I reached the DATS command center, so there wasn't a lot of newbies around, which means if you do play, you're already playing with a pretty veteran crowd, but I'm not really sure how the community is. I don't know if they're like helpful and welcoming or if they're toxic, so can't really speak on that. Quest markers in the game don't really seem to exist, and I literally could not find the captain to keep me doing quests or even start event quests, which was really depressing. So I finished my DATS exam and I just went for it. I was like, yeah, like we're gonna do a thing. And yeah, no, that thing ended up not happening because I couldn't figure out where I was supposed to go. And the thing is like one quest wanted me to go talk to Dr. Yamashima or whatever, and it turns out he has an NPC in 2 different parts of the city. One's a vendor, and then one is the actual version of him that you have to speak to. And so I was so confused after I found the vendor, and all it says is, like, speak to Dr. Yamashima. And I kept talking to Dr. Yamashima, and it wasn't doing anything. And I was really confused, and then finally I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna run around and defeat Digimon. And then I finally found this guy, and then, you know, I was able to keep going. The Digimon in the trial area don't really drop items, so again, I was just running around defeating Digimon, wondering what I was supposed to be doing, and it was a waste of time. And again, so it's just something that really wasn't holding my interest, because there was just no pacing, like, no quality here. The sound effects in this game are loud, and I know that it's probably something that you can change in the menu options, but I really didn't want to mess with it. I kind of just wanted to start recording. But the Digimon sound effects are so loud, and the music itself is so loud, and everything is loud. And they chose literally the most obnoxious sound effects for, like, the stomping and clomping of Digimon. And it was just something that, after a while, it started to annoy me. So I muted the game, and I put on some YouTube instead, because I couldn't stand it. The Digimon themselves are actually pretty cool. I know that in my last review, I kind of laughed that I was like, oh man, I should have chose Agumon, you know, because everybody knows Agumon, which is true. But I saw that wolf, the wolf one, the blue wolf, and I was like, you know, I bet this guy's really awesome. And I didn't even remember what I chose, like, in the old review, because I hadn't rewatched it yet. And so I was like, I'm just gonna choose the blue wolf, because I'm pretty sure when I played it the last time, I chose Agumon. And then I go and rewatch the old review, and old me from 2013, you know, from 9 years ago, is just saying like, oh man, people are gonna be mad, I didn't choose Agumon, I chose the blue wolf. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. You know, I did it again. And the thing is I think that they added in the 4th Digimon, which is like this owl creature, because I don't remember that being part of the lineup. I do remember the weird leaf thing and Agumon and the wolf thing, but I don't remember the owl. And then as far as getting like the mercenary Pokemon, I got a little caterpillar, and it was pretty cute, and watching it digivolve was actually really neat. Again, because they have the event items going on, you get these this Merc Digimon for free, and you level up extremely quickly because you have a 200% experience increase. So I got to see all my Digimon like evolve into their final form, which is something I never got to do when I played it back in 2013. So that was already kind of an improvement. But like I said, the Digimon are pretty cool, but the graphics are just like, okay. They're nothing to write home about, and like I said, they kind of like lean more towards the lower quality, but still, it's kind of what you would expect from a free game. I played the game for about 2 hours and only got one Merc Digimon via one of the beginning quests, but I couldn't get enough data to hatch any more, even though I had an inventory loaded with eggs. I got lost a lot, traveling takes way too long. I kept running into these invisible walls where they shouldn't even be. Like, there would be an NPC vendor, and there would be a place I'd have to cross that didn't have, like, stairs or a ledge or anything, and for some odd reason my character would just, like, stop in his tracks, and I'd have to take, like, this long arc to get to this NPC that I should have been able to walk in a straight line and get to, but there was just these invisible walls. Like I said, the servers were really smooth, but again, there was a lot of parking in front of NPCs, especially once you got to, like, the DATS command base or whatever. There really is just a mixture of way too much to do in this game, but not enough to do, which made staying engaged really, really hard. And we come back to the big thing, which is balance. So they give you a lot in terms of mechanics, and they're like, oh man, you can hatch eggs, you can use these items, you can do this to increase your Digimon's power, you can Digivolve your Digimon, there's all these things, there's this and this and this when it comes to your Digimon, and they throw all these mechanics at you at once in one fell swoop, but then they don't even give you anything that kind of, like, creates that repeated behavior so that you use those tactics and you remember them. So they're like, man, you can hatch Digimon, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna go collect Digimon now. But then you get all these eggs and then you don't have the items to actually hatch them. But hey, if you pay real money, you can do that, you know? And so it just ends up being an issue, because they're like, you can do this, but we're not gonna let you do this. You know, they're like, oh man, you can customize your avatar with clothes, and they give you like 3 pieces of clothes. And then they're like, but if you want the rest, you're gonna have to pay for it. You know, they're just like, oh, there's a story here, but we're not going to give you the quest markers for it, and even when we do, the translation's so broken, you can't even enjoy it. So, you know, they give you all this stuff, but then they give you nothing to use this stuff on, and then they just hope that you remember it later in the game whenever they decide that suddenly it's mandatory to know, you know? And I just really didn't enjoy that about the game. So, I mean, my overall opinion hasn't really changed too much from 2013. It is clear that they did some things different, but it's really just not enough to keep me engaged in this game and to make it worth it for me. So my overall opinion is that the game, like I said, has had a lot of quality of life changes, and it's cool that the game still has players, events, patches, and they're even advertising a second half of the game which is being added in 2023. But really, as an MMO, it's just not for me. It's not very appealing, it has a bad HUD, horrible translation, and not enough story to keep it interesting. It floods you with mechanics that you can't even use half the time unless you pay real money, and when a free game is like, oh hey, everything's blocked by a paywall, you just know you're not going to have a lot of fun. So if you want to, try it if you want something to pass the time, but I really wouldn't see this as something to get invested in. But hey, that's just my opinion. Speaking of opinions, if you have thoughts and opinions on Digimon Masters, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. But that's all I really have for this video, because I'm not going to be returning to this game. It's just not worth it to me. But hey, you know, if you like this video and you want to see more, go ahead and suggest an MMO that you would like me to try down in the comment section down below. If you like MMOs and you're looking for something else to play, go ahead and check out my MMO sampler playlist via my channel. Thank you all for your continued support of this channel. I know that we've gotten some recent subscribers lately, and that's pretty cool. We're still really small, and I don't see us getting much bigger, but I do appreciate everybody that's already here. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will go ahead and see you in the next video. Alright, ciao you guys.